Hi, I'm Jill Rupp from June Tailor, and I'm here to show you an easy way to cut strips, squares, triangles, diamonds, hexagons, bias, and fringe, all with one tool, the Shape Cut Ruler. This is going to be a tutorial on how to cut all those shapes and some of the other great features of the Shape Cut line. We'll also show you the Shape Cut Plus ruler, Shape Cut Pro, and Quarter Cut. Stay tuned for our demo. Let's start with the basic Shape Cut ruler. As you can see, there are 12 inches of cutting space with these slot openings at every ½ inch, so you can cut in any increment of a ½ inch. Or I'm going to show you how you can actually shift your fabric over to this dotted line, which is 1/4 inch, if you want to cut in 1/4 inch increments. So let's get started by doing some basic cuts. What I'm going to do is take my fabric, and that is typically folded in half. We'll have the selvages up here on top, and I'm going to fold my fabric one more time so that I'll be cutting through 4 layers. Just smooth that out, and the fabric can go anywhere on the mat. It does not need to go on a line because we're going to use our Shape Cut ruler to do our measuring. Lay the Shape Cut ruler over the top, and what you want to do is make sure the bottom fold line is on the bottom 0 horizontal marking of your shape cut. So to begin with, we're going to square up the edge of our fabric. And once I've got that bottom 0 horizontal line on the fold, I'm going to expose my blade and tilt it slightly into the 0 slot opening and cut up. And that is going to square up the edge of my fabric. If you want to cut strips, you would essentially pick the size strip you want and cut in that teardrop opening. So for 2-inch strips, I would put my blade in at 2. Again, if you tilt your blade to introduce it into the slot, it makes it much easier. And 4, and 6, and 8, and so on. And that's how you would get all of your 2-inch strips. Now, if you were cutting 2.5, you would cut at 2.5, 5, 7.5, 10, etc. And you can see all your strips are perfectly cut at 2 inches. Let's take a strip and take a look at this. It's exactly at 2 inches. Now, to turn your strips into squares, we're going to leave our cut strips intact like this. And you can either turn your cutting mat, or in this case, I'm a little short on room, I'm going to turn my strips in the other direction. And we're going to complete our squares. So now all my strips are together. And I'm going to lay my shape cut on the cutting mat over my strips. And I'm now going to use this edge for my bottom 0 horizontal marking. I had squared that up last time. So now I know that's a straight line. I'm going to again start out and put my blade in at 0, 2, 4, 6. And you can walk your hand up the ruler, or you can just hold on in one spot. I'm fine to walk my hand up as I cut. And now let's take a look. And this is where you would get all your perfectly cut squares. So let's take a look and look how they fit exactly into the grid. So they're perfectly cut every time. You can take your stack of squares, lay them anywhere on the mat. Now take your Shape Cut ruler, and what you want to do is center the pack of squares under the 2 black horizontal markings that say 45 degrees. So let's just tilt the ruler slightly, and now that square is centered right underneath those 2 45-degree marks. I'm going to cut right through the center of the ruler, number 6, and that's how you get all your half-square triangles. You can also take your cut strips and you can put them on either the 60-degree or the 45-degree line on your mat to cut diamonds. So we're going to use the 60-degree slot here. The Shape Cut ruler goes over the top. Now this time I do want to make sure that I have at least the vertical and horizontal lines kind of matching up with each other. So let's take a look at number 3 here, and I see my horizontal line is right on the number 3 part of my mat, so I know I've got this lined up. So my strip is on an angle, but I'm going to be cutting straight up on the ruler. Again, let's go to the 0 mark and continue to cut in that same 2-inch increment so we're consistent throughout. So I'm again cutting at 2, 4, 6, 8. And this is how you get all of your perfect diamonds. So these are 60-degree diamonds, and they are wonderful for making all types of blocks. If I had used the 45-degree mark, my diamond would be more elongated. Now let's take that stack of diamonds, lay them anywhere on the mat, and now let's center the center line of the shape cut, which is 6, all the way through the short sides of the diamond. So 6 is going through the middle. To make hexagons, you're going to cut half of the dimension of the diamond on either side of the center. My diamond was 2 inches, half of that is 1, so I'm going to cut 1 on either side of center. So I'm going to cut at 5, and I'm going to cut at 7. And that's how you get your perfect hexagons. To use the shape cut for 1/4 inch measurements, we're going to use this dotted line, as you can see here. To start out, however, you're always going to want to square up the edge of your fabric. So make sure that that bottom 0 horizontal marking is on the fold line, and go ahead and cut in the 0 slot. Now I know that my edge is straight. Now I'm going to actually shift the ruler over so that the edge of my fabric is on the dotted line. So move that ruler a little bit to your left, and now the edge of my fabric shows right here on the dotted line. So to cut 1 1/4 inches, I know I have a 1/4 here. I'm just going to go over 2 slot openings. So 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here, plus my 1/4, and that is going to get me 1 1/4 inches. So let's put that over here so you can see how precise that is. If you were going to do 1 3/4, you would again line up the edge of your fabric vertically on that dotted line. So now you've got your 1/4 here, plus the 1 and another 1/2 here. So we're going to cut in the number 2 slot, and that will give us an exact 1 3/4 inch strip. So this is handy to use for any of your 1/4 inch requirements on strips. If you want to cut fringe, what you can do is again take your fabrics and lay them underneath the shape cut. And say we want to cut 1/2 inch fringe. We first start out by squaring up the edge of our fabric, and to cut 1/2 inch fringe, that's 3 inches long, I would cut in every slot marking up to the 3 inch line. So just like this. And that's how you would get your perfect fringe. Of course, you could cut in inch increments, 1/2 inch increments, or you can even cut it at 1/4 inch increments. So for example, I could take the ruler, put it right over my cut fringe, and now this time line up the edge of my fringe on the dotted line and cut again, and we'll cut up to that 3 inch mark. And this is how you would get your 1/4 inch cut fringe. The shape cut ruler works great to square up your quilt blocks. Simply lay your sewn block on the mat and then center the block underneath the shape cut where the 2 black 45-degree marks intersect. So look side to side and make sure it fits, and then just go ahead and cut to square up, and that will be the 2 sides of our block. And then we can take those areas away, turn the block, and do the same thing. Recenter it right under the 2 intersecting 45-degree marks, and again, trim and trim. And now your block is perfectly squared up. The Shape Cut Plus ruler is very similar to the Shape Cut. only we have a full 18 inches of cutting space, so it gives us a little bit more opportunity to make sequential cuts. But again, we're always going to start out with our fabric selvage to selvage, and we're going to fold it one more time like this. And so our bottom fold line of the fabric is where we are going to put that bottom 0 horizontal line for the shape cut plus. Now we're going to refer to our instructions. And please hang on to these. If you ever lose them, let us know. We'll send you another one. But this is the key right down here in making strips that are in different 1/4 inch increments. Everything from 3/4 all the way up to 4 1/4. And so you're going to want to use this key to tell you how to cut your strips. For today, we're going to cut 2 3/4 inch strips. So you'll note there's a first set of cuts at 0, 5 1/2, 11, and 16 1/2. So let's make those cuts. So I put my blade in, tilt the edge of the blade at 0, and my second cut is 5 1/2. My third cut is 11, and my last is 16 1/2. So now I have my cuts done. I'm going to remove the edge that we used to square up the edge of the fabric, and then I'm going to shift the ruler over to the 1/4 inch mark. So I'm going to actually shift the ruler to the left so that the dotted line is now on the cut edge of my fabric. The 0 is still on the horizontal line down here. And now I'm going to make my sub cuts, and to do that I'm going to cut at 3, 8 1/2, and 14. So let's go to 3, 8 1/2, and 14. Again, you can walk your hand up the ruler or just hang on to like that. Now let's pull these away, and these should be perfect 2 3/4 inch strips. So let's take a look, and here they are, perfect strips at 2 3/4. So continue to follow the key down at the bottom to get all of these cut increments easily and accurately. The Shape Cut Pro is the workhorse of the Shape Cut line. You can actually cut a full width of fabric without having to fold it, just one time selvage to selvage, and go ahead and make your cuts. It's perfect for cutting 2 1/2 inch strips all the way across your fabric. You can also cut 5 inch strips, so you'd be cutting at 5, 10, 15. Then turn the shape cut and subcut 5 inch squares, perfect for charm squares. Same thing with 10 inches. You can cut at 10 and 20, turn the other direction, and you have your perfect layer cakes. So the Shape Cut Pro is wonderful for stacking fabrics underneath each other. You can then cut through several layers at a time. Again, 2 1/2 inch strips, 5 or 10, perfect for all those big cutting jobs. The 1/4 cut ruler is similar to the Shape Cut ruler, only the slot openings are every 1/4 inch on this ruler versus 1/2 inch. You'll notice that there is a top set of slots and a bottom. All the ones on the bottom are in 1/2 inch, and all the ones that are above that are on the 1/4 inch. So let's cut 1.25 inch strips. To do that, fold your fabric selvage to selvage and then fold it again. So you have 4 layers, and then we're going to fold it one more time. So you'll be cutting through 8 layers of fabric using the 1/4 cut. Lay the fabric anywhere on your mat, lay the 1/4 cut over the top. Make sure that the bottom fold line of the fabric is on the bottom horizontal line at 0. You want to start out by squaring up the edge of your fabric, so let's cut at 0, and that will give me a clean edge. To cut 1.25 inches, I would go to the 1 inch, but 1 teardrop higher to the 1/4 and cut at 1.25 inches. The next one would be 2 1/2, so I would cut in that, and so on. Now let's take a look at these 1.25 inch strips. You can see how they are absolutely perfect. There's no bunny ears along the way. You do have to hang on to the ruler a little bit more because you're cutting through 8 layers, but it will cut perfectly through 8 layers. What I really like about the quarter cut is when you're sub-cutting. In this case, I have a strip that's 4 3/4 inches and I want to make squares. So I would be cutting at 4 3/4 and then at 9 1/2. So lay the quarter cut on the bottom edge of your fabric. Let's start at 0, and that's going to square up the side of the fabric. And then I'm going to find the 4 3/4 mark. Here's 4, here's 4 1/4, 4 1/2, and 4 3/4. So we'll cut there, and then we'll cut again at 9 1/2. And that will give us 2 perfect 4 3/4 inch squares. So for sub-cutting in any increment of 1/4 inch or 3/4 inches, the quarter cut ruler is going to be your biggest tool in your sewing kit.